Those of you that have watched this channel for a while know that I am not the biggest fan of all elite wrestling AEW. You guys know my favorite wrestler of all time, the rated R superstar, formerly known as Edge in WWE, now known as Adam Copeland in AEW, is over there. But I have said numerous times there's a reason why I don't watch AEW. When AEW first debuted in 2019, that initial Double or Nothing pay-per-view, I watched it and I thought AEW was going to work. It was a tremendous event. Of course, it wasn't headlined by, but the most famous match of the night was Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes, and it was different. And when AEW first came out, when Dynamite first debuted, it felt different. And AEW for the first year, really felt like they had their plans, all sorted out. It really felt like an alternative to WWE. And this was at a time where Vince McMahon was booking anything and everything on WWE programming, including Brock Lesnar versus Cain Velasquez and the whole Saudi Arabia bit and everything. And it was a disaster. And in 2021 at the All Out pay-per-view, when they brought in Bryan Danielson, when they brought in CM Punk, it really felt like everybody in the professional wrestling world, and I think Adam Cole was also there, making his debut. It really felt like the whole professional wrestling world was talking about all elite wrestling, and this was, of course, right after the COVID-19 pandemic, and want fans right back in the building. But ever since that night, all out 2021, the debut of Bryan Danielson, the debut of Adam Cole, CM Punk making his in-ring return match for the first time since the 2014 Royal Rumble. I think AEW, for some odd reason, whatever it is, changed that night, and they haven't felt the same since. And over the last 2 years, there were two specific instances that even though Adam Copeland and Edge is in AEW, and I try to watch his segments when I can because he is my favorite wrestler of all time, and that's the only reason why I ever think about that AEW is on. There are two specific moments to me that turned me off as a viewer when I used to watch in AEW. And that was, Cody Rhodes left and the writing and the continuation. And by the way, you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of Cody Rhodes. I did not love him winning the Undisputed Championship from Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. I don't think Cody Rhodes the best babyface of all time in WWE, like some of y'all recency bias tend to think. But Cody leaving AEW to me was a major red flag because of obviously the fact that Cody had basically started that company alongside the Young Bucks and Tony Khan. He was, an EVP. He was a Ed Booker. He was a leader backstage. And to go back to WWE, and I remember the talk at the time was, well, he has to be an EVP in WWE. He has to be, creative control and all this stuff, right? There's no way he's just going back to WWE to wrestle. And that was indeed the case. And then obviously, Brawl, when CM Punk completely ripped the Young Bucks, completely ripped Tony Khan, the whole incident backstage has made AEW look completely like jokes. And it was even amplified even more when AEW created Collision just to get the separate rosters between CM Punk and the Young Bucks. That obviously blew up at All In. AEW showed the footage. And as I talked about the next day, we all saw CM Punk did nothing wrong in that footage. I'm sorry, Tony Khan, you were not threatened for your life. But the reason why I'm talking about AEW and Tony Khan in this segment today is because Tony Khan tweeted over the weekend that he books for the Sickos. And I've said this, and all you AEW fans can yell at me because AEW is the best. The only reason why you guys like AEW, I'm telling you right now, is because you have a bad taste in your mouth in WWE because of what Vince McMahon did over the last, 5, 10 years of his booking, which is turn away WWE fans forever. So you're bringing these hardcore wrestling fans, which I've said, if you are a hardcore wrestling fan, it's basically being a hardcore NFL fan. It's being a hardcore NBA fan. It's being a hardcore Major League Baseball fan. It's like being a hardcore fan of another sport because, oh, I watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and I watch TNA and I watch AEW. It's so much better than WWE. Get out of here. You know it's not. You know WWE is the best professional wrestling product in the world. You know it's been better since Triple H took over in 2022. There's a reason why Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, The Rock felt like the biggest storyline in the sport of professional wrestling in the last decade since the Daniel Bryan Yes movement in 2014. We all know TNA had great moments, and TNA built itself as sort of an alternative to WWE, not competition to WWE, outside of when they did the Monday Night Impact, which, basically killed TNA. And now the funny thing is, TNA and WWE are working together. But let's be honest, outside of everything AEW done in 5 years, the only real homegrown star that they have that didn't come over from WWE, that built itself, built its name, its reputation on AEW alone, is Maxwell Jacob Friedman. That's it. One guy in 5 years. Everybody else, like a Jade Cargill, she was okay in AEW, but she wasn't a household name. She has already become bigger in WWE by stepping foot on that brand, on that machine, than she ever did in AEW. And you can say the same thing right now about Ethan Page in NXT. He's having more of a spotlight on him right now in NXT than he ever did in AEW. And Cody Rhodes, by the way, to his credit, since coming back to WWE, some people think he's the greatest babyface WWE has ever had, especially since John Cena. And he did that by leaving AEW. He would have never reached that status where the fans were turning on him because all AEW fans are marked, especially the hardcore ones, the ones that don't watch WWE, the 500A or whatever you're booking, Tony Khan. But let's face it, AEW is backed by Tony and Shad Khan, these rich owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars who have been a disastrous franchise for the last 20 years. Outside of when Blake Bortles, had that immortal year and they went to the AFC Championship game. Even when Doug Peterson's been there and now Trevor Lawrence there and they're trying to rebuild the franchise, there is still that stigma, that aura around Jacksonville because they've won one playoff game. This is the year 3 now of the Peterson era. They won one playoff game, and it just does feel like they don't have the backing and the support of the fans or ownership. And it seems like to me that Tony Khan is so invested in being a fan of professional wrestling. He wants to book all these matches with New Japan Pro Wrestling, have the Forbidden Door, have 26 titles on one show, have, Ring of Honor involved. It's just so confusing for a casual wrestling fan. And the one thing AEW does not do that WWE doesn't do as much anymore, I thought they overdid it in the Vince McMahon era, but it's still allowed a casual fan to get invested in the product is do multiple recaps during the show. I think Michael Cole and Corey Graves and Pat McAfee, Wade Barrett, everybody, but specifically, as I mentioned in my Night of Champions recap a couple weeks ago, or excuse me, not Night of Champions, the King and Queen of the Ring. I thought Cole and Corey did a great job at explaining the storylines to somebody who was tuning in for the first time, explaining this is what's happening, this is why. And they're not leaving anybody in the dust. And WWE, I think, does that on a weekly basis, pointing out new things about storylines, but repeating things so that anybody tuning in for the first time could understand what's going on. That's not the point in AEW, and AEW is not growing. And you can say all you want, and all you AEW fans can market me all you want in the comment section below. But this company is not growing. They may get a new media deal from TBS and Warner, but that's because TBS and Warner is cutting costs. They're losing the NBA on TNT reportedly, and AEW could be somewhat cheap programming. And I do think that getting their pay-per-views, turning them into premium live events on HBO Max. Many people have HBO Max. I've heard since they rebranded with Discovery Plus, it's one of the best streaming services out there. I used it a little bit to watch the NBA on TNT in the playoffs. It's a pretty good app. I'll say that. And also, I did watch that Nickelodeon documentary, Quiet on Set, on there, which was a rough watch. But regardless, I think that will potentially boost AEW, fans coming to see the product for a new time. but television ratings have been stagnant, and they've been stagnant for years. Their audience, they're paying tickets. Every event they've gone to, over the last 3, 4 years have gone down, down, down. Now, WWE has had down periods. We saw 2018, 2019, where some crowds looked as bad as AEW crowds currently do. So I'm not saying that you cannot turn it around, but Tony Khan needs to stop booking dream matches. He needs to stop booking for these psychos. He needs to stop tweeting all this stuff because it's so easy for somebody like me who does not troll a lot. I don't hold personal vendettas against a lot of people on the internet. I'm not in the trolling business. But when you make yourself look like you want to be trolled, it's very easy to get trolled because everything Tony Khan spits out is garbage. Every promotion he sells about AEW is garbage. Everything about AEW right now on screen is garbage. It's just not an appealing product. And so, my advice to the one, the only Tony Khan, first of all, man, get some writers. Okay. You and Brian Danielson, who I know has a big influence, and Brian Danielson has a great wrestling mind, but you cannot book, from show to show. And it sounds like he's doing a lot what Vince McMahon did back in 2019 when he booked from show to show. Nobody knew what they were doing before the show. There was no long-term storyline in place. That's not the way to get fans back. Also, let's not put on five-star botch matches on AEW Collision on Saturday night, which I always thought was a stupid idea. It was a stupid idea to have Collision in the first place. It was a stupid idea to have Rampage in the first place. Nobody's watching either of those two shows. If you want to expand Dynamite to 3 hours, get some of those talent that are not on TV, potentially on TV, hold live events would actually matter, maybe even more so than WWE, and put championships on the line and make championships change hands at house shows. Maybe that will get people out to see your product. You got to do a better job at catering to the wrestling audience because there is this thing called tribalism. But you know what? Most of the tribalism, and I'm not saying all because I'm a part of this, because if you will say so, yes, I am a WWE stan. I've talked about this. I grew up with WWE. I already mentioned multiple times. Edge is my favorite wrestler of all time. I watched WWE for 9 years when Edge was out of action. It was not the same. I have wrote and talked about numerous times how Edge has come back in 2020, filled with the COVID-19 pandemic, where there was no sports on but wrestling. How because of that, how because I was able to cinch my teeth back into WWE, it would have been I wasn't just casually watching weekly, made me fall in love with the sport again. And WWE has turned into a sport for me. And I don't have time with all the NFL, the NBA, MLB games to watch AEW on Wednesday, WWE on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, AEW on Saturday, AEW on Friday night, TNA on Thursday. If you have time to do all that, good for you. You're a wrestling nerd, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is not a business to succeed going forward. And no matter how much you guys like these stars in AEW, you have to admit right now the product is not good, the ratings are not good, and this fan out here booking is doing this for himself. It's his personal pet project. And I'm watching a documentary right now on Vice on Tuesday nights. Who killed WCW? In 2 decades, we may have another documentary called Who Killed AEW, and we know the real stand of that. And that answer is one Tony Khan. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.